Thanks to those joining me live and to those who'll be joining me on archive. D-Style Boxing here. Hit the like button, hit the notifications button so you get notifications when D-Style Boxing comes on live on the air here on YouTube.com. The chat is open, and if you're watching archive, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Mayweather McGregor, it is reported. I'm getting this from BoxingScene.com. All right. It is reported. Boxing Scene reports that Mayweather McGregor is expected to have generated approximately 4.4 million domestic pay-per-view buys, and that an official announcement could be made as soon as this week. That would mean that the highly publicized spectacle between boxing legend Floyd Mayweather Jr. and UFC superstar Conor McGregor, while wildly successfully financially, didn't break the pay-per-view record for combat sports. Mayweather managed to win against Manny Pacquiao, still owns that distinction. Roughly 4.6 million customers purchased Mayweather Pacquiao, in May of 2015, based on mainstream traction mainstream McGregor gained during their infamous 4-city, 3-country promotional tour in July. Some involved in the event, most notably UFC President Dana White, thought Mayweather McGregor would surpass 5 million buys. All right. Now let's get something clear. Let's get something very, very clear for everybody out there. All right. And shout out to Boxing Scene. You can check it out there. Look, a couple of things I want to address here. All right. Number one, domestically, it looks like it's not going to go over 5 million. That's number one. All right. There's other pay-per-views from other countries that you could account. Keep in mind that they sell at a much lower price, for example. But nonetheless, Dana White came out and he made an announcement that it did over 6 million. Very misleading statement by Dana. It was far too early for him to announce that. That's one of the reasons I didn't come on here and do a video about it. Okay. It was just far too early to assess that, and but we're talking about domestic buys. Keep in mind, Mayweather Pacquiao had a lot of, international buys too. And not only that, big contracts and stuff like that internationally. Internationally, I would venture to say, even factoring the pay-per-views in the UK and all that McGregor Mayweather had, I think Pacquiao Mayweather made more money, right? The amount of money that networks outside of the U.S. paid to have the rights to fight in the respective country was astronomical and in very high demand in the Mayweather Pacquiao fight. Okay, there was bidding wars going on. Not saying that didn't happen in this case, but MMA just isn't as well known worldwide like people think. Outside of the U.S. and Ireland, obviously, where McGregor's from, and Canada and Brazil, which are the big powerhouses, right? The UK, obviously. Like this countries, like, I guess, there's other countries that MMA is big on, but not as big as people think, right? But anyway, nonetheless, at the moment, it fell short of the Pacquiao versus Mayweather buy. So those that bet for the 4.9 million over lost their money, right? Those who bet that in Vegas lost money, a lot of money. Right, and that was a big bet being put out there, and then Dana White made them believe they won the bet. Right, Dana White made them believe that they had won. No, sir, they didn't win anything. Now, does that mean they didn't break the record? I will say this: the original number that's always released always has a bump in several months, and there's reasons for that. Okay, now there's less of a bump in recent times because everything is just done electronically and direct now. All right. But billing cycles have a lot to do with this. Okay. Depending on what the billing cycle is and depending on when pay-per-views are downloaded out of receivers, depending on what type of company, satellite TV or files, whatever you have, when it downloads. Okay. I'm not saying it's a big percentage, but there's a percentage there. Remote control orders is a small percentage, but a percentage nonetheless of orders that come in later. Okay, so some months later. All right, so there's pending orders there, and there's other factors to take into account, like pay-per-view disputes and stuff like that. that are minus the number, but nonetheless, there always is a bump. Okay, and I expect, right, that this will have a bump. Will it break the record? There's a very good chance it still can, right? Remember, Mayweather versus McGregor, I'm sorry, Mayweather versus De La Hoya was first announced as 2.1 million, and then later, a couple months later, they said it was 2.4 million. That was a 300,000 bump, right? And those are the small numbers. De La Hoya versus, Trinidad, it was first announced at 1.3, and then it bumped to 1.4. Other fights, okay. The Ricky Hatton Mayweather fight was first announced in the 800,000s and then bumped up to the 900,000. So there's always a small bump there, okay. There will be a bump for this one too. It's inevitable, especially with these astronomical numbers. I believe Mayweather Pacquiao was first announced at 4.4 million or 4.3 million actually, and then it had a bump. So there is still a chance that as they're counting the numbers here, still whatever's left, is there a chance that an additional 200,000 will be added to it? Yes, there is a chance. Okay, so I still believe ultimately it's going to end up breaking the record, right? Now, it'll be the first time the record is broken months later, because usually when the record's broken, it's broken. In this case, it's kind of a waiting game. But as of right now, Pacquiao Mayweather still stands. Okay, it still stands as the pay-per-view king of all time. It was priced the same, so it still has a higher revenue. I believe it still has the gate record, although they're being very sketchy about that. Mayweather Promotions is being very secretive about that shit, or they're being real difficult about it. But I don't know what they're ashamed about. I mean, it made a lot of money, right? But we'll see. Now, what I will say is this. Since a very large number of pay-per-view purchases here were done digitally, meaning like through applications and apps, one thing to keep in mind, first of all, they lost a lot of buys, okay, because of pirating. A lot of people wanted to watch the fight, but they didn't want to pay for it, right? That was a dilemma with this fight. A lot of people ended up buying it anyway. That's true, especially last second. The amount of people that are trying to order it last minute was insane. But when you try to order it last minute like that, stuff crashes, okay? And so there's no way to know, but I would venture to say about a good 300,000 to 400,000 buys, easy, were lost due to the websites failing, the applications failing, the UFC application, the Showtime application, and people that were not able to get their order in on time, because of everything being backed up. A good 300,000 to 400,000, or 200,000 to 300,000, I should say, more or less, I think were lost. I mean, in fairness, the same thing happened in Mayweather versus Pacquiao. And here's the deal, guys. Mayweather Pacquiao, believe it or not, I believe lost even more because they were not ready digitally like they were this time. So a lot of people that couldn't watch it through their cable subscription and they didn't want to pirate it or something were able to order it digitally, okay? So that wasn't really an option for Pacquiao versus Mayweather. Not that I'm really aware of, or at least they didn't have the amount of it like they did for this one. And for this one, they were prepared. They were very prepared and expected the high volume in the last 2 hours or so, and in the last day in general. And the Pacquiao Mayweather, they were prepared, but they were preparing like if it was going to be around 3 million. Like they figured it's going to break the Mayweather De La Hoya 4.4 record, right? I believe that was a record. I think that was still the record, not the financial record, but the buys record. And I think they said, well, it'll do a little over 3 million, possibly. That's what it was projected to do. And then it did far more than that. So Pacquiao Mayweather did lose a lot of pay-per-views too, with people that couldn't quite order it because everything was backed up and they were not prepared. If they were prepared for that one, Mayweather versus Pacquiao could have done 5 million, all right? But they just weren't prepared for it. What does this tell us? I was convinced that this fight was going to smash the record. I was convinced it was going to do over 5 million. So that means I slightly overestimated what the fight was going to do. It's still a great success, and I believe it's still going to eventually break the record. I think by a little. It might break it by 100,000 or something, but I still think it's going to break it. Once everything is tallied, we're not going to know for about 2-3 more months if it's going to break the record or not. We just don't know right now. But whether it does or doesn't, it was a success, right? But I definitely overestimated it, and maybe it was caught in the moment or something. But I think it's easy for us, to forget how big Pacquiao Mayweather really was. That was a big fight. It was just it had been 2 years. The fight was a letdown, and people just kind of had like a negative feeling about the fight. But people forget just how big the anticipation for that fight was, worldwide too, and domestically especially. And that was a fight that we never even knew over 4 million was even possible. So they were not even prepared for that. They lost far more pay-per-views for Mayweather-McGregor. I'm sorry, for Mayweather-Pacquiao than they did Mayweather-McGregor. Far more pay-per-views, okay, because they weren't even prepared for that. They didn't have the amount of ways of watching it and stuff like that. But there you go, guys. I think it'll eventually break the record, but it hasn't broken the record yet. Not quite yet. Right? It's at 4.4 approximately. Now, it just depends. If they come out and they say it did 4,350,000 and it's short of 400,000 north of 4 million, then I don't know. But if it's like 4,460,000 or something like that, where it's north of 400,000, then now we're talking, right? It does depend. It will depend, but I think it's going to have a 200,000 to 300,000 by jump, right? And we'll see if it breaks it. We won't know for a couple months, but it's pending right now, right? DStyle is just letting you guys know that it doesn't mean it's over yet. And for those that don't understand how it works, so for example, a vast majority of the pay-per-views, they know by the next weekend. Okay, they already know. They have a ballpark figure. In 2 weeks' time, they got a more accurate number, but not all the numbers are in, right? Not all the numbers are in. So what happens in some cases is, let's say you order a pay-per-view with your remote control or something. Now, there's some cable satellite TV providers that when you order a pay-per-view, you do it with either internet connection or phone line, right? Back in the Mayweather-De La Hoya fight, it was mostly phone line, right? And that's why it had such a big jump from 2.1 million to 2.4 at a 300,000 jump because of that. In this case, it's not as big of a jump because most people ordered through internet, right? The receivers connect to the internet and they order it that way. Or with cable providers, you don't really need that, right? But for those that do it through a phone line, I'm not saying it's a lot of them, but it's thousands of them, right? If they don't want to pay their bill, or they don't want the pay-per-view to show up in their next bill, they'll order it, disconnect the phone line, or they could even disconnect the internet from the receiver, right? The event's already ordered, they pre-order it, and then they watch it, right? And most companies don't do a forced download. They just do it like every 2 to 3 weeks, right? And the forced download doesn't go through if for whatever reason their service is interrupted or they have the receiver disconnected or something like that, okay? Or it could just miss it, right, altogether. Or if they don't have a good signal, it doesn't go through. But a lot of people do that, right? That's why it takes like another month or so to get better numbers in. It all has to do with the billing cycles and when it's billed and paid, right? So there's some companies count it differently, okay? Some of them have disputes, saying that they couldn't get the order in, so the customers are calling in, and so those numbers are pending. So there's a lot of factors to take into account here, right? A lot of them. There's people that ordered the fight and then they cancel their service, and until they send the receiver back and it downloads it through the warehouse or something, they don't even charge it they'll later send it to their bill. They'll send them a bill for it later, but it hasn't been counted yet. So now those aren't a majority at all, but it's enough. Well, when you have 4.4 million people counted so far, if there's 2-3%, okay, or whatever the percentage is that haven't been counted yet, then you still have to add those numbers. Like, you still have to add those up, right? So there isn't as big of a jump as there used to be, okay, because everything's a little more digitalized now. Everything's more direct now, right? But there definitely will be a bump, right? Now, what does it mean? Nothing. It doesn't really mean anything, okay? Like, at the end of the day, it's still a lot of fucking buys. It's like, at the end of the day, whether it does 4.5 million or 4.7 million, it's still a fucking lot, right? It's a lot of buys. And also, what can we learn from it? Well, you know, that maybe we forgot, but Pacquiao Mayweather was fucking big, okay? It was huge, and this shows it to you, okay? This should tell you how huge that fight was. And if I'm correct, and I believe I am, that more buys were lost because they were not as prepared as they were this time for the influx of orders last minute, then Mayweather Pacquiao lost a lot more buys than this fight did, right? Far more, because they just weren't ready for that. Getting ready for anything close to 4 point, you know, like for Mayweather McGregor, they were preparing for a possible 5 million buys. They were preparing for that. For Mayweather Pacquiao, they were preparing for 3 million orders, right? That's a huge difference. Huge difference, right? And if Mayweather Pacquiao had a digital option where you could, people that aren't going to be able to be at a bar at home, they can order through an application, they would have sold at least 200,000-300,000 more, right? So they may have had issues too, last minute and all that, but then I think it would have done 5 million. I really do. So there you go. You know, I know Mayweather has a portrait of himself and McGregor in his house. I don't even know what to say about that. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I just don't. It's his house. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. It's just kind of odd to me. But I'm guessing he did that because that was a fight that sold the most. It would be a little underwhelming if it actually doesn't break the Pacquiao fight. You know, we'll see. You know, it's coming down to the wire, folks. It's coming down to the wire. Okay, we'll see how many buys gets counted ultimately, right? So this is why, by the way, whenever, like, I remember people would call certain people liars and this and that because they would release numbers and then, oh, like, bunch of liars. You know, some people say it sold this and some people say it sold that later. It's not that they're lying, it's that the numbers released are different. So just remember, anytime the numbers are released, there is still going to be a slight bump. Okay, we never know how much the bump's going to be, but it's always a slight bump on the total buys. That's why some fights will come out and they'll say it did 140,000, and then later on it's 160,000. All right, that's why Mayweather De La Hoya was 2.1, then it went up to 2.4. Because there's always a bump there. All right, always a bump, and that's all I got to say about that. Right. Let's see. Who's shocked about this in the chat? Who is shocked that this fight hasn't broken, at least not yet, broken the record? A lot of people, including myself, thought it would, you know, and like I thought it would have broken it and then it would have had a bump later. This 4.4 is a lot. Joe Lopez glad he didn't pay for the circus. Yeah, Maymac made a lot of money. No, bro, this is not after the bump. The bump takes months. Like it's not gonna happen in after a month later. You know what though? I just realized that it's practically been a month. So like, damn, there might be. I don't know why. I was thinking like Gennady Golovkin versus Triple G. So you're right. It has been a good portion of the bump already occurred. The biggest bump already happened. So you're right. Which probably means that's why they probably didn't release the numbers. It was probably 4.3 or something the weekend after, and then now they're releasing it because they wanted to wait for some type of bump. So you're right. I don't know if it'll break the record. I don't know if it'll break the record because a month has practically already gone by. What was the fight? At 26? Like literally a month has already passed by. So the biggest bump, if the 4.4 is true, already happened. Like the biggest bump already happened. There's still going to be a slight bump still, but the biggest bump already occurred. So you're actually right. I need to correct myself there. Good point. See, that's why DStyle looks at the chat, right? So, because I was talking like these are the numbers the weekend after. They're not. This is a month after. So if 4.4 is correct a month after the fight, it might not break the record. There's a chance still, but DStyle would say that chance is a big underdog. Okay. And if it was 4,490,000, they would have said 4.5. Okay, so we know it's not anywhere where they can round it up, right? They're either rounding up for 4.3 or it's not that high above 4.4, right? So I would venture to say that there's a slim chance, but a chance nonetheless that it still breaks the record. Okay. Yeah, more numbers will trickle down, but the biggest bump already happened. Like I remember De La Hoya Mayweather was like 2.1 the weekend after they announced, or just low of 2.1, and then like a month later it was like 4. Almost 2.3. You know what I mean? Like most of the bump occurred, and then it had a little slight bump like 3 months later of another 100,000 or so. So I don't know. It's in today's age, it's the amount of pay-per-views that are left pending are just less and less. Like technology is better now than it was in 2007. So while the amount could be the same, the percentage of the bump just isn't as high. So I don't know. I think it might fall just short, of the 4.6. It might fall just short because a month already passed by. All right. And something tells me they were waiting for the bump to see if it got close to 4.6. It didn't get there. Right. It didn't quite get there. So I don't know if I could, we're going to have to wait about another 2 months or so to get a good ballpark figure of what Mayweather McGregor did worldwide, factoring in everything, factoring in the gate, factoring the domestic pay-per-view, theater money, factoring in the international networks and what they what they paid for the rights to the fight in their country. Just factoring in everything, foreign pay-per-view, international pay-per-view, I should say. I'm interested to know which fight made more money in the end. That's going to take some research, so I'll look into it. But we got to wait about 2 months to get a better, clear picture here. But I doubt it made as much money as Mayweather Pacquiao. I just doubt it. Okay, the amount of, especially Asian countries, and what they're willing to pay for the rights of the fight, for the Pacquiao Mayweather fight was insane. Okay, countries in Europe, countries in in Africa, South America, what their networks are paying for Mayweather Pacquiao was insane, right? So we're tying up a lot of money here, and so we'll see. All right, so how some people asking, Cybernetic Slayer, it's mind-blowing to think that 1.4 was considered otherworldly back in 1999, and now we're talking about 5 million buys today. Yeah. Well, one, just talking about raw numbers, yeah, but like here's the thing. All right, here's the thing, guys. When it comes to pay-per-view, like things people need to understand, right? Like if you look at, let's say, Tyson versus Lewis, I think it did what, like 1.6 or something like that. I forget the exact number. And then you look at a fight today that does over 2 million, and people are like, oh, it's just as big. Well, no, hold on, hold the horses. Like, not really, right? Back in 1999, I didn't have pay-per-view availability in my house. I couldn't order a fight, right? I had cable, but there was I couldn't get a remote and order it. Like, I mean, my mom couldn't afford it anyway, okay? But let's say she did. Let's say she said, all right, son, I'll order the fight for you. She couldn't order it. Like, I didn't have it available to order. There was no digital like application I could go to, Showtime, show.com and order it. I couldn't. There was no way to order it. Like 2 or 3 of my uncles had it available, and they, to be able to order it. Okay. Pay-per-view accessibility was very limited back then, compared to today. Like today, not only does everyone have pay-per-view availability, they have multiple ways to order the pay-per-view. Multiple ways. You have a lot of ways you can order it, right? And then satellite TV really started to grow, and it changed the whole landscape, right? Because there was a digital age started. That digital at the time was the HD of its day. You look at it today, it's crap, but compared to HD, right? It makes 480 HD look great. But imagine, like, now you got 4K coming out, for God's sakes. But when people were started to be able to order it through remote control, the amount of people ordering fights started to grow substantially, right? Like De La Hoya Trinidad was in like the year 1999 when De La Hoya fought Trinidad and Lewis fought Holyfield, and there was all these big fights, these big pay-per-view fights. They were doing these great numbers, and that happened when the digital age started to grow, and you were able to order fights using your remote control if you connected the receiver to the phone line, or you could just call the provider so they can order it for you, right? And that changed the game, right? It changed the game. Because DirecTV and Dish in those days were growing substantially, right? Just an interesting fact for people out there. But today, man, there's so much availability. Like if Lewis fought Tyson in 2000, get that same fight, make it today, 2017, right? That fight easily does over 4 million, easily. Right, it's the amount of people and the amount of press that was getting pay-per-view, that was getting Super Bowl coverage. That fight, okay. Tyson Holyfield was getting Super Bowl level coverage. Right, I mean, it was just insane. So it's just insane. De La Hoya Trinidad. I'm not saying it would break these records, but it would do over 3 million today. Just looking at the amount of press that was getting. And the press was different back then. It was more newspapers. There was no social media. I get all that. But it's just imagine with social media. Imagine with social media what De La Hoya Chavez would have done. What De La Hoya Icorte would have done. What De La Hoya Whitaker would have done. What Trinidad Hopkins would have done. What De La Hoya Hopkins would have done. I mean, they would have done astronomical numbers. So everything has changed, right? Not only that, I remember when Holyfield Tyson in 1996, it was, I believe, It was almost $60 that fight. Now that's less than. I mean, that's what they're charging for Canelo, Gennady Golovkin today. That's what they're charging today. Factoring inflation, that's a lot of money, bro. For 1990, that's 20 years ago. If you factor in inflation, that's a lot of money, right? Just saying. So the fact that Tyson was doing over 1 million buys when there was a far smaller percentage of homes that can order pay-per-view is unbelievable. That's crazy. That's why Tyson fights were known for having fucking 20, 30 people at a household. You know, pay-per-view fights in general, I remember growing up, they were packed. The homes are packed. And maybe that's just anecdotal, right? Maybe that's just my experience. But when I would go watch De La Hoya fights, when I would go watch Tyson fights, when I saw De La Hoya Trinidad, when I saw just thinking of all these pay-per-view fights from the past, when I saw Roy Jones versus John Ruiz, and when I saw those fights, it was at a packed house with a lot of people there. All right, like it was like you would think it was a fucking birthday party for a little kid or something. Like a bunch of people just showed up. And today, you know, that doesn't really happen. Like I'll be at a house with maybe 7 people at the most. You know, so it's different times. The model's different. Well, not so much the model, but the availability is different, right? And there you go. Yeah, it happened a month ago, so that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I underestimated the bump, man. Lewis Tyson was 1.9 million. Holy smokes, almost 2 million. That was when was that fight, by the way? 2003, 2004. Lewis Tyson. You know, more paper availability than when Tyson fought Holyfield, but I would like to say, you know, that's so impressive. That's very impressive for the early 2000s. That's unbelievable, actually. Now, just think about it. Everybody says, let me put it this way. Conor McGregor is considered like the biggest UFC star ever. He's never done 1.9 million on his own in the UFC. He's never done it. No UFC fight has done, in today's age, has not done over 2 million, right? So, and that's in today's age with so much pay-per-view availability. That's insane. Yeah, Ed Harbor, I remember buying my first pay-per-view for De La Hoya Vargas. Shit has changed a lot in how you order even since then. All right. A lot of people remember De La Hoya Trinidad, first fight. Okay, Lewis Tyson was 2002. Why was I thinking 2004? Was that Tyson's like attempted comeback in 2003? Was it then? Anyway, 2002. Well, there you go. I mean, I remember how young I was in 2002, man. Like I couldn't order pay-per-view at home. Not that I would be able to, but I'm just saying I just didn't have the ability to, right? By the way, who watched the scrambled pay-per-views? Uh-huh. Who scrambled TV, man? I would hear the fights because the sound was good. I had no problem with the sound. I would be able to hear the fight. All right? I'll be able to hear the fight. It was great. A few fights I listened to. A lot of people listen to fights like that, you know? Me and my father went to one of my cousin's houses for May Mac. It was streamed there. Streamed like, what do you mean they streamed there? All the time they invited people and they had a fucking, I've gone to people's houses, man, like they're inviting me to go see the fight. And I'll show up and they have like the fucking laptop like next to the TV, and I don't know, man. There's something about that. It's just, I don't know. Oh, man, I'm just gonna go watch this fight at the bar. Peace out. Gonna get people over, man. Have everybody pitch in at least. Like at least, come on. 10 people are there. They pitch in $10. There you go. Mayweather McGregor's paid for, right? The fight parties to me were more common packed back in the late 90s and mid 2000s before the digital pay-per-view era. Yeah, a lot of people maybe it's just me, maybe it's just some of us, but I just remember more packed homes. Right? Like everybody wanted to watch the damn Tyson fight, but not everybody had it available. All right. Yeah, some people did ask for 8 Harbor for refunds for May Mac. Yes. So there is going to be a negative to the bump too. So that's why I'm thinking it might not break the record. Some people bullshit too. I remember a couple years ago I ordered a fight. Which one was it? I made the stupid mistake of ordering Hopkins versus Roy Jones 2. No. That's not it. That's not it. No. Hopkins versus Dawson. I believe that was on pay-per-view. If my memory serves me correct, the first fight. Like I called and said that I lost my signal, and just trying to get the shit taken off. Remember when Hopkins like laid in the floor and shit? Fucking B-Hop, man. Hopkins versus Roy Jones 2. I was given a stream for that. I streamed it. Some of the YouTuber on here send me the link. Ironically, Hopkins versus Roy Jones 2 around right after Hopkins beat De La Hoya. Right after that, even before that, but mostly after that, like he defeated Oscar De La Hoya, and Roy Jones was the 175-pound king. Let's see. Let me make sure I have my shit together here. Was it before or after? Anyway, somewhere around there, Roy Jones versus Bernard Hopkins was the fight. That rematch was the fight to make. And they just couldn't agree to the money. They just couldn't agree to it. I don't know if they would have done it at a catch weight or if Hopkins would have gone to 175 or they would have done, I don't know what they would have done. But that would have been a big fight. Okay, I think that would have done in those times over $1 million. Hopkins took 3 breaks in the fight with Roy Jones. Yes, he did. Roy Jones ran into Mason the Line Dixon. Yes, he did. Right? Yeah, he did. All right, guys. That's all I got, man, about these pay-per-view buys. So there you go. All right. I'm out. Peace.